Just another one is, did you check on the effect on soil quality, more so the organic carbon for the cereal intercrop system?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So mainly this greatest benefit on crop yield is a combination. The increase in yield is because of the harvest of two crops, because there will be also the penalty of decreasing the population, or the penalty that come through competition. But then when there is complementarity, then there is increase. So the greatest positive benefit is mainly based on the increase or the two harvest from the two crops. Regarding the specific effects of soil organic carbon, in these studies, we simply were to do a vote count, but then the studies that reported were few, those that associated sustainability. But we have another work that we've published that looks at the effect of grain, legumes, and dryland cereals on carbon sequestration in Africa and in Asia. And we see that they do increase soil organic carbon.
Thank you very much, Chen. Applause for Chen. Thank you.
So the next contributor is Jacob Emmanuel Joseph. Jacob is a Tanzanian current PhD candidate in agricultural science at the University of Göttingen in Germany. Jacob has been actively engaging with smallholder farmers in East and West Africa for about 3 years, assisting them in translating weather forecasts into relevant agro advisories to manage climate risks in their productions. Jacob combines crop models, weather forecasts, and expert knowledge to develop and disseminate tailored climate information products for local farmers. Welcome, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. What I'm going to present, trust me, is one of the effective and efficient pathway toward toward enhancing resilience and sustainability in smallholders farmer system. So the title of this presentation is Potential for Adoption and Use of Climate-Informed Agro-Advisory by Smallholders Farmer. The focus is in the dry land, and today's presentation will give a case study in a dryland district in Tanzania called the Kongwa, which is located in the central part of the country. And yeah, in the region called Dodoma, which is the capital city of Tanzania. Well, technology. Yeah. Oh. Okay, so in these 10 minutes, I'll take you through the introduction or the motivation of this study and some challenges that we observed in the Kongwa district and the intervention that we have tried to implement together with the evaluation that we have done in order to assess whether the intervention worked, and also some conclusion and recommendation. So climate variability and change, as you might know, it really affects the sustainability. It negatively impacts the sustainability and resilience in rain-fed system. What does this mean? It simply means that it impacts the yield and livelihood of smallholders farmer in this system. Well, some studies have found that decision support tools can be potential to enhance resilience and sustainability. But an important question that we should ask ourselves, in this kind of system, the rain-fed system, are there exist efficient decision support tool that supports smallholders farmer to increase the resilience and sustainability? And in terms of climate variability and change, we mean the decision support tools that will help farmer to manage well climate risks. Well, we set out a study to investigate the situation in a district called Kongwa. And to do so, we had a baseline survey that investigated acquisition and utilization of climate information services in Congo. So we had a sample size of 220 farmers, which we surveyed them in 2021. And what we found as the challenges in acquisition and utilization of climate-informed information services in this region is that one of the biggest challenge was the accessibility and compressibility. About the 55% of farmers who were interviewed had access to weather forecast through either radio, SMS, or TV. But unfortunately, that only 45% were able to understand and utilize the information that they got. And only in pre-season planning, which simply means land preparation, things like choosing of crop patterns, and also selection of crop variety. But only 23%, which is very low percent, were able to utilize this information or simply use this information in tactical management. So things like weeding, top fertilizer, and thinning. Those are which we refer as a tactical management. And the reason which they pointed out to this situation is because of the liability of the information that they received. Most of the farmers, they said that the information that they received were not reliable because of the uncertainty of the weather information. And not only that, but also the timeliness was the major factor here, that the information that they received didn't align with their growing calendar. And also the content was one of the biggest challenge because this information didn't include location-specific agronomic advisories. So this is the intervention that we did. We designed and employed a system called Intelligent Agricultural System Advisory Tool, or simply ISET, in this district. What you can see, those dots are just the villages that the intervention was implemented. And just a bit of, thank you. So a bit of what ISET is, this is just a system that is designed and developed through the following processes. So number one is a comprehensive data analytics, which simply include statistical analysis, not only that, but also modeling activities. And the goal of this activity is to identify triggers and the threshold of decision that a farmer is doing before the season and during the season and after the season, by the way. And these data analytics go into or feed into another component, which is called the decision tree, which simply the decision tree. So this is the one which helps us to create relevant message for a certain kind of threshold that has been met. And then the last but not least, the dissemination of whatever message that has been created or simply has been obtained from the decision tree. Well, as I said, both tactical and strategic management are important. So the ISET system has this pre-season decision tree and in-season decision tree. As you can see that, let's see if the pointer is working. Oh, okay. Yeah, as you can see, this pre-season decision tree take in as an input season forecast and complemented by some drivers, in this case, were the sea surface temperature. And to this, they realize how the season is going to be with some level of confidence, and then some message are created and disseminated before the season. So this helped the farmer to plan ahead of the season. And coming in the season decision tree, these are the tactical management. We simply mean that a farmer has to do a lot, and therefore, as you can see, this is overclouded with a lot of threshold. Just to give you an impression of what are the message obtained from this decision tree. So this is one of message in one of the village, sent in one of the village. And this was Lengaji, the village called Lengaji. The season was predicted to be below normal, and therefore recommendations such as using drought tolerant and short duration and dual purpose crops were sent to this village. Again, in the season, so this is one of an example of the message which was sent in the season. It's all about, you see, there are a lot of things like weeding, thinning, and top dressing. were advised to a farmer in here? Well, so what we found is that with this intervention, this is what we found. Actually, we increased the accessibility by increasing the number of farmers who were receiving the weather information, and also the complexibility, because the message was sent in their local language, in this case is Swahili. And not only that, but also we got real-time feedbacks for the farmer to continue learn. And the focus that we used were a little bit high resolution, so increase the reliability of the information, and the timeliness and the content were also improved in this intervention. Just an evaluation, we used two group of village, the treatment village and the control village, and those are the number of the household involved in this intervention. Well, and this is what we found. We compared the baseline. We compared the baseline and the treatment period, actually, or the treatment. This is what we found. We found an improvement in using the weather information or the climate service in tactical management compared to the baseline. Sorry, I'm going a little bit too fast now because of time, but yeah, so what the message here is that the farmers who were involved, or simply who received the advisory, use the advisory more in the tactical management compared to the baseline. So the percentage increased of using the information in tactical management. And the farmers liked a lot of things, and one of the things they liked most is about doing the better management. So simply the advisor that they got advised them in good agronomic practice as well. The information that they received helped them a lot to advise other farmers and do informed decision. Well, and this is a comparison between the farmers who had advisory and those who didn't have advisory during the growing season, that is 2022-2023. And as you can see, it was easy to reduce the cost of labor and do timely decision, and also do better agronomic management with the farmers who had advisory compared to the counterpart who didn't have the advisory. In conclusion, as I said, climate information services, improved one, which address the needs of the farmer, is a pathway toward increasing resilience and sustainability in smallholders farmer. But holistic approach are inevitable in this case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jakob. So questions there?
Thank you so much, Jacob, for your excellent presentation, and nice to see you again. My question is, are this climate information is downscaled for the farmers? I mean, from national level forecast, regional, then local level forecast. Otherwise, below normal, above normal, meteorological terminologies cannot be understood by our small farmer holders. So what is the trend in Tanzania? Are they downscaling the information, or farmers, are they using the information by their own language? And what's the trend there? I just need some clarification. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. As you have seen that the seasonal forecasts are a very important component in this advisory. In the region that we are working, the Tanzania Meteorological Agency, or TMA, produce a downscaled forecast for a level of district. So we use that one, but also we complement with other sources that are available there to then scale further in a group of village, which we call it a cluster village. So this one actually increased the reliability of the forecast that we used. But in terms of understanding the terminology, we had some training before implementing the system with lead farmers who can educate other farmers what does it mean. And also we collaborate with other partners like TARI, so that is Agricultural Research Institutes of Tanzania, with extension agents who are able at least to tell us, okay, so if this is the situation, I mean, this is what we observed in terms of climate or in terms of weather information, how does it translate to the management that a farmer has to do? So it's a way of collaboration and also co-producing this information so that it can be understandable to the farmer and also, yeah, of some benefits to what he is doing. Yeah, together the forecast is simply a farmer gets what the forecast mean and what he or she can consider to do during that period of time. Yeah.
We have
Another question?
quick one. We have one online from the chat. On slide 17, what measures did you take to prevent information diffusion? Okay, to prevent information diffusion. Yeah, not super clear, but maybe this can be clarified later on when we have the discussion of the presenters. And then there is another one. You have concluded that improved climate information services boost rainfed productivity, but very few farmers have responded that the yield was improved. Any explanation to that?
I think the conclusion was, if you go to the last slide, the conclusion was okay. Yeah, if you go to the last slide, yeah, we didn't actually about the yield, we didn't see significant difference between the farmers who had the advisory and the farmer who didn't have the advisory. But what we saw is that in terms of the cost of input and labor and doing better the management, that was really improved. So the yields and the season that we implemented this was a below normal season. So simply that means it was a dry season. There are a lot of things that made the yield not improved in such case. But with our studies in other regions like in India and Senegal, we have found this also, even in a good season, this system also improve a lot the yields. So we are confident that this kind of intervention can improve as well the yields.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jacob. Thank you. Now, I would like to invite Amrit Pir. He has a work together with Alexander Herr, Rajvinder, Leonie, Tanay, Veronica, Jules, Etienne, and Monica. Amrit is a senior scientist and resilient cropping systems group leader at the Department of International Cooperation at FIBL, Switzerland. He has a PhD in natural resource management, specialized in farming systems development from the University of Adelaide. And as a farming systems development enthusiast, he leads various research activities for development initiatives focusing on resilient production systems. Amrit Pir will present about practicing agroecology and how this can strengthen the farmers' ability to cope with climate change. You have 10 to 15 minutes, Amrit, and here we have this tool that you can use to point. I think it's working. Can you just test if it's pointing properly? Yes, good. Then go ahead. This is not working again. What a challenge, nah? Yeah, we throw this away. But maybe you can use the keyboard. What is your key for you to? Brilliant. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. And just before I start my presentation, there's a long list of these people on the list, but there are around 100 people more who are working in these countries, and I'm presenting it on behalf of those people who are involved in this project and around 2,000 farmers from where I'm going to show you the data. So what I'm going to talk about with you today is because it's not it's a continuation of previous two presentations where we are seeing that how climate change is impacting the yield and or the productivity, and how it can be also affect the sustainability of our production systems. And anyway, so yeah, so the in can you help? So in literature or in all our keynote speech, we see that agroecology interventions are one of the potential solution um, for the to deal with our global challenges, which can be like climate change or food insecurity and all those. But it's very clear the way we eat food, it impact our climate change, our climate, and in in uh, in return, climate change impact the productivity of food systems. And but there is a studies and also the agreement even at a policy level that agroecology is one of these approaches, or a agroecology approach can contribute to this climate resilience. Um, so agroecology is a holistic approach, because a lot of time, as I work for Research Institute for Organic Agriculture, people ask me about the comparison between organic and agroecology. It's very, for us, or not for us, agroecology is a holistic and integrated approach, integrating agroecological practices into farming system. And it is a kind of a agreement that it can improve farming system resilience. And for us, organic is a production system which is a part of agroecology, or which use also the agroecological approaches. But what I'm going to talk today is slightly different. For us, all these initiative I lead and my group work, it's always like we, in the end, at the end of that project, we always come up with the recommendation. And for me, it was very interesting in last 10 years to see that at the end, it's always a list of things what farmers needs to do. And farmers has like limited capacity, they have limited resources. And so my interest now is that, okay, why they are doing what they are doing. So if you go to a farmer and ask, what you do for climate change, or if that is the first priority, maybe the answer will be not, because maybe the first priority will be the productivity, and then other things comes later. So and this topic is very, very understudied, that how perception or what we believe in agriculture system affect what we do. So that's what we are trying to study from this thing. Like, and there are some studies in psychology and also in artificial intelligence, which shows that perception leads to the motivation, and then motivation make it more adaptive perception, or in another word, it's also called active perception. So that active perception means that you start continuously changing, this cycle start. So you perceive, motivate to do something, adapt it again, your perception change. So based upon that, we hypothesize for this analysis that farmers' awareness about their ability to cope with climate change is correlated with the number of agroecological practices they follow. Because even again, at policy level, we say agroecology, and it's a one word for us. But when we go on a ground and ask farmer, can you explain what agroecology is? These are the practices. There are a number of practices. So that was also very interesting for us to look at, okay, how it is going to be. So that's here when I say agroecology intensity, in this presentation, it means number of agroecological practices they are following. What we did, this program is active in 4 countries, but for this presentation, I'm going to show you the data from 3 countries. That's our Tanzania in East Africa, Niger in West Africa, Chad in Central Africa. And we surveyed their farmer household in the rural areas of these countries. I'm not going to go into number, but just to give you a idea that when I'm talking about, these are around 2,000 data points. And the gender is also another important aspect would consider in it. And it was not like targeted that we wanted to have a 50% of women and men there, because we only surveyed the lead farmers there, but somehow we were lucky, it's a 50-50. So gender is quite balanced here. I will not spend so much time on this methodology, but just to give you, today I'm just going to show you the agroecology practices relation with the perception of climate change. But this survey was very, very detailed, and we asked all the questions possible there from us. Another very important thing, because I just to avoid this confusion later on, that we used cumulative linked mixed model. For us, it was very important that all these factors, they add up. it's not a single factor, one factor, another. So this was the model what we used, but what it means in simplified terms, because we don't have really time to discuss that complicated model there, is that when we analyze this, it's not that we just simply looked into the correlation of agroecology and the perception about the climate change, but we looked into very much all the other possible factors which can affect this perception, including food security, income level, location, and even and these in parentheses, what are the things are in parentheses, that was the random factor we considered. Okay. So again, this is very interesting, and what you have to see that these are 3 graphs from 3 countries, and we asked first, again, for me, climate change is one word here. On a farmer level, we asked what you mean by climate change, what you think, and this was the response. Most of the time, the most common response is that rainfall pattern changes. That's what they have observed. More diseases are there, increased temperature, droughts. But what is interesting here, that in all 3 countries, these were the common challenges. It was the open-end question, and it was not but somehow you have to see that how in all these 3 very different countries, these were the common challenges farmer mentioned. Now, again, open-ended question about the agroecological practices. What agroecological practices you do? And these are the agroecological practices we collected from all these farmers. These are listed 22 here. We can debate about this 3rd one there or 4th one, follow that if that is agroecological practices or not, but that's what farmer mentioned. But you see that intercropping and crop rotation are the most common one. It goes to the talk of also first presenter. And these are the, like, it's not a gender different there. You know, like if a farmer household is led by a female farmer or a male farmer, more or less these things are common there. Now, so this first question was the level of concern about climate change. And these bars are the number of respondents, so that you can see that a lot of people, and this red line is a median of agroecological practices here. So most of the farmers are only doing 2 agroecological practices. And I can't tell you that which one those 2, because it could be changing from farmer to farmer, but the number is 2 there. And these lines with the different colors is that how much they are concerned about climate change, that if the climate change will hinder their ability to produce crops in the future. And you could see that this, for example, this light green line, that's the farmers who are very concerned. The probability of finding that farmer is around 40%. So if you will survey 100 farmers, maybe the 40 farmers will be very concerned, but they will be doing around 8 agroecological practices. The other way to it is like, if we ask that if farmers think that doing agroecology practices will improve their ability to cope with climate change. And here the result was super interesting, that farmers, if they are doing 4 agroecological practices, that is the point where things change. So that's like a 50% of probability. So out of 100 farmers, 50% farmers will be more confident that they can deal with climate change if they are doing 4 agroecological practices. But this ability green line here shows you that I will not claim it for 9th or 10th agroecological practices, but what we can see that the change from 2 to 4 or 2 to 6 agroecological practices increase their perceived ability to see that they can deal with climate change. So so the conclusion is, like, one thing is that the climate change for farmer is mainly the rainfall pattern, more disease, adverse climate, more disease incidence or increased temperature and droughts. On the other side, the agroecological practices, when we talk about it, it's in these countries are intercropping, crop rotation, organic fertilizer use, adapted seed, and agroforestry. And then, but most important for us is, because now we are going to use in our future work it as an entry point, that that farmer who perceived their ability to cope with climate change increase by doing more agroecology, this could be entry point. It can be used from both ways. So what we can see that a farmer who is doing more agroecological practices will be more open for the other intervention for climate change. On the other way, it could be that if we increase the awareness about the climate change and try to change their perception about climate change, they might be more open to do more agroecology on the field. So this is still work in progress. So I would be very happy to have feedback that what do you think that it's okay and what is not. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one or two short questions to Amritpir. Yep.
Thanks so much for your presentation. I was just wondering if your statistical model spoke to your hypothesis, and how did you measure farmers' awareness about the ability to cope with climate change?
So it was kind of, we have a set of around 22 questions, which was like the follow-up questions. And so it's qualitative data, but I think, yeah, so of course we only asked it. It was not measured quantitative. So it's a qualitative data, and it's by asking different question, open-end and closed-end questions in different ways, and then to extract it kind of.
Okay, thank you so much. It's very interesting to see this result. And I was wondering, how did you approach the question? What are the agroecological practices that the farmers use? Were they already aware about agroecology? Do they know about this approach? Because the practice, of course, they're already in the ground, they're already used, but we call them agroecology. I don't know if farmers call them agroecology. And then we sometimes, when it comes about agroecology or the transition to agroecology, we face the hindrance, the obstacle posed by chemical fertilizers. And farmers, they don't want to, if the purpose is having food on their table and having good yield and productions, then they don't want to give up on chemical fertilizers. So how can we support this transition to more organic fertilizer or efficient use of chemicals?
I will be very brief here. Farmers, they don't see it as agroecology. So we have to ask them practice. And when you go on, that is one of my key learning, that we talk it about agroecology here, but on the ground, these are practices. And these are practices what you can do in conservation agriculture, in regenerative agriculture, in organic agriculture, and so on. About the chemical fertilizer and pesticide, very brief answer is that it is the issue of affordability right now. So the cost benefit ratio of using fertilizers and chemicals in these areas is still not very high. It is happening. It's happening in fertile region. It's following the same pattern as the green revolution. But so means I will not beat behind the bushes. So it's kind of, they can't afford it, so they don't use it. So those who can afford it, they are still using it. But these farmers are seeing the benefit of doing agroecological more systematic way. So they are also interested on this reducing the cost of cultivation. So that is their motivation for agroecology and organic.
So now the next one is Robin Black Rat. Oh, sorry. Okay, so Robin is a PhD student at the Institute for Environmental Economics and World Trade at Leibniz University, Hanover. She studied environmental sciences as well as sustainability, economics, and management. Robin research currently focuses on resilience in agriculture in a sustainable context, in particular the promotion of agroforestry systems, as well as the impacts of digitalization and the influence of human decision-making process. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you very much for that nice introduction. Here's also a warm welcome from my side. Today I will be presenting joint work I conducted together with Rasadika Sharma and Ulrike Grote, and I will present some findings not on agroforestry, but on the resilience and behavioral traits to droughts among farming households in Thailand. So, done it. Okay. We have seen that intensified environmental shocks contribute or intensify significantly to existing challenges of small-scaling farming households in emerging economies, such as Thailand, and rising temperatures and changing rainfall patterns increase the phenomenon of precipitation falling above a long-term average, leading to droughts. And these droughts have been recognized as one of the most severe weather extremes worldwide and can last for weeks, months, and even years, and lead to negative direct and or negative short-term and long-term effects. And we would like to investigate, as I said, the behavioral traits, because households can mitigate the impact of this shock on their overall welfare by choosing different response strategies. And these response strategies are based on the resilience of the household resilience capacity. And in this regard, resilience is not only about persistence or conservation of existing structures, it also includes two other dimensions. So it also includes the ability of the household to adapt and transform, and each of them lead to different responses. So we have the absorptive capacity leading to persistence. So these would be the coping strategies. We have the adaptive capacity leading to incremental changes and adjustments. And we have the transformative capacity leading to transformational responses. So for example, a household leaving the agricultural sector in total. And we can also link these different capacities and strategies to different shock intensities, and they can have a short-term or long-term effects. So as I said, we have households and they experience a drought, and then they can respond by taking up a specific response strategy. It can be an absorptive, an adaptive, or transformative strategy. And this also depends on the overall resilience capacity. And for this study, we identified 4 key capacities determining the uptake of these so-called response strategies. This is one, the shock intensity, then we have the financial capital, the social capital, and then the human capital, including the behavioral traits. And even though all of these determinants are important for resilience building, existing literature so far identifies financial capital, assets to a high extent, and social capital to a lower extent as key determinants of the resilience capacity. However, evidence on the role of behavioral traits is still scarce, even though they have shown to influence behaviors and attitudes that then in the future affect the investment decisions and socioeconomic life outcomes. Most findings, however, on behavioral traits and resilience are based on data from developed countries, and therefore maybe not hold for emerging economies. So this is even a more interesting context looking at Thailand. Additionally, there's reason to believe that the droughts might not affect the households directly, but influence their decisions through mediating factors influencing the behavioral traits. So for this, in order to understand these determinants, we aim at investigating the role of behavioral traits in the household's choice of taking up certain response strategies to mitigate environmental shocks in rural Thailand. And even though there's a strong need to increase overall resilience, quantitatively, most existing literature actually looks at the absorptive strategies, so these coping strategies, and excludes the ability of the households to adapt and transform. And that's why we want to examine not only the absorptive strategies, but also the adaptive and transformative strategies. And then if the behavioral traits are influencing the household's decision-making process directly, or maybe as a mediating or through a mediating role. We are looking at a variety of 9 different response strategies that we identified in the beginning of the study through a literature review. I will show them to you in a few slides. So first of all, we are going to have a look at the data that we used. I will keep looking up, but I can't see anything there. And we used the data from the Thailand-Vietnam Socioeconomic Panel from 3 rural provinces in Thailand. And we used the panels from 2017 and 2019. There are many more panel waves, but these are the 2 panel waves that included the questions on the non-cognitive skills, so the behavioral traits. In total, we have over 2,000 observations, but we can only include roughly 1,600 observations because the households had to have taken part in both ways and had to have answered the answers on the non-cognitive skills. In order to measure the droughts via an indicator, we use precipitation data from the eMERGE data set that is provided from the NASA. And here we have monthly precipitation data from 2001 up to 2019 on a grid from 0.1 times 0.1 resolution. It's still fairly large. We are also trying to do a robustness test using the SPEI that also includes EFA transportation, and but we have problems finding the matching temperature data to our precipitation data at the moment. We included 7 measures of behavioral traits. So we have the big 5 and risk and patience. Or the shock indicator. So we merged the precipitation data with the village data and weighted it for each village. Then we considered a month as being a drought, or there was a drought in that month, if the rainfall in that month is less than 1.5 standard deviations lower than the historic average. And then that gives us the number of months considered as a drought in a year per year. And we calculated this according to the survey wave from May to April. And so we consider, or we give it the binary a 1 if a household experienced at least 1 drought or 1 month that is considered as a drought in that year. Having a look at our model, so as we not only want to obtain direct effects, but also indirect effects, we chose the generalized structural equation model, the GSEM. So here we can identify the direct effects that the mediating variables, so including the behavioral traits, have on taking up a certain response strategy, and also, of course, the droughts and our control variables. And we can also obtain the indirect effects that the drought might have on a mediating variable, and then influencing what kind of response strategy might be chosen. So for the first equation, we have the response strategies as a dependent variable, and then the independent variables being the mediators as well as the drought indicators. And for our second equation, we have the dependent variables being the mediators, and then again, the key independent variable being the drought indicator, and then of course, including all our controls. So if we have going to have a look at some of the results. Here we see our drought indicator. So here's the number of months considered as a drought per year for each of the villages. And we actually see on the left-hand side there's that we have a higher number of droughts that the villages experienced. So the intensity was higher there, and that actually aligns quite well with what we can objectively observe, because a majority of the South Asian countries were actually affected by the severe droughts between 2015 and 2017. And we can actually also see this using our quite rough drought indicator with our grid being 0.1 times 0.1 degree. We also captured the frequency using interaction terms, but I can show that to you when we have a look at the results from the GSEM. So what kind of response strategies did we include? So we have, as I said, a total of 9 response strategies. We've got 3 per capacity. And for the absorptive capacity, we are looking at the immediate reaction. So here we are looking at 2017. For the adaptive and transformative strategies, we are looking at the change between 2017 and 2019. So time is running, so we have to skip to our results. Here we see the direct effects of our variables on the uptake of certain response strategies for the absorptive strategies, so the immediate reaction or possibilities to somehow smooth consumption. We see, as we could suggest, reading the literature, that income is quite a consistent predictor for the uptake of certain strategies. We also see that the existence of a drought influences the uptake of a certain strategy, and also the household characteristics play a role. What's actually interesting is what we can't see. We can't see that the big five, so the behavioral traits, play any kind of significant role in the uptake of, or direct role in the uptake of these immediate responses. However, if we have a look at these mediating factors, we see that there are some influences. So again, the droughts influence our mediators, so willingness to take risk, patience, and as our control per capita income. We excluded the big five as a mediator because when we speak of people that are older than 35, we can actually assume that the big five are quite consistent and stable and won't change due to a short-term shock. But willingness to take risk and patience are here. Again, the household characteristics show significant influences also on these mediators. And we also see that the big five actually play a role. As I said, so the droughts do influence the mediators, but our behavioral traits do not play a significant role in the uptake, or direct significant role in the uptake of certain response strategies. So we see here that the financial capacity and the household's characteristic seem to play a more important role than human and social capital. And this does make sense because they have to somehow immediately react. There's no room for choosing different strategies. They can only react and smooth their consumption based on their financial capital and their characteristics, household characteristics. If we have a look at these long-term effects, so adaptive and transformative strategies, we again see income, nice consistent predictor for taking up certain strategies. Also, we can see the same, I haven't displayed it here, the same pattern for the household characteristics. We also see again that the droughts, especially in 2015 and 16, play a more prominent role than the more or less less severe droughts in the later years. The big difference is that we do see that here, the behavioral traits do play a direct role in the uptake of the response strategies. So before we saw there was no direct a significant effect, only the mediating effect. And here, if we are looking at the future, so the long-term aspects, we do see that there is a different effect. So they do play a role. If we have a look at the mediating effects, we again see that the droughts also influence the mediators. And we also see the same pattern for our big five, influencing in the same direction our mediators. If we have a look at our interaction terms, so how the frequency, so we would assume that a household that experienced a drought in 2015 and then in 16 and 17, that this might have a direct effect, but we actually see that only the years where the drought was the droughts were high intensity drought, that actually shows effects, not if there's like a reoccurrence. We also run several robustness checks, and then I will quickly come to the conclusion. So we aimed at investigating the role of behavioral traits. For this, we looked at a variety of 9 different response strategies and run a GSAM. And then our takeaway would be that we see that while behavioral traits play a minor role in the uptake of these immediate coping strategies, these absorptive strategies, we do see that they actually influence also directly the adaptive and transformative, so the long-term response strategies. We also see that behavioral traits can act as a mediator, and especially willingness to take risk is negatively influenced by droughts and then might affect future decision-making and investment choices. We see, aligning with literature, that income is a persistent predictor for taking up certain response strategies. However, we also see that behavioral traits consistently predict the mediator income. And we also see what I quickly said at the end of the last slide, that the severity, the intensity seems to play a higher role than the frequency. And then, thank you for listening. And I would like to end my presentation.
Super. So just one short question.
Yes.
There is one here.
Yeah, I'm interested to know if there exists drought area warning system there, and if they existed, do you think somehow they can change the response strategies?
The existence of the drought.
Yeah, drought area warning system.
Sorry, I can't hear. I'm not.
Drought early warning system.
Early warning. Oh, sorry. No, we haven't actually looked at that. I had the same idea when I was looking at your presentation, that we do not see if there's any kind of information provided to the different villages. So I actually made a note back there, but I don't know actually if there's any kind of information provided on precipitation data or drought warning systems or so on. Yes. Thank you very much.
And for the last presentation of this session, I would like to invite Roberto. Roberto will present a work written by Ingrid, himself, and then Adriana Busoni. Roberto is a forestry engineer, graduated from the National University of La Plata in Argentina, and then he completed his studies, including PhD in Freiburg. Yes, he worked as an assistant professor in forest biometrics at the same university. And then later on, he took over the management of the National Forest Production Research Program of INIA, Uruguay. Since 2022, he's been working as an independent consultant on the topics such as silviculture, rural development, and investments in afforestation. Yeah, you're going to present the work, climate resilience of family livestock farmers with silvopastoral systems. Thank you very much, Roberto.
Thank you very much, Marcos. Hello to everybody. As you heard from my biography, I am not coming from this kind of sciences, but I am involved in the last time because of the concerning in Uruguay about climate resilience and climate change. I hope my voice play with me today. I spoke a lot this week with a lot of new friends for all around the world. That's why it seems a little difficult. And very important, most of the credits of these works belongs to Ingrid, that she's made his postgraduate study with this subject, and we had the opportunity to, as a team, to present it in Tropenbos. And as I know, perhaps the first work about Uruguay. I Googled all the works that are uploaded from 2005 till yet, and you will find the words of Uruguay only twice. That means it's a honor for me, coming from Argentina, to present something about Uruguay. Some few words about an introduction. It is known that United Nations promotes resilience to climate variability as a global priority. For sure, a lot of you know that we spend a lot of money on mitigation. Was the first idea to make a mitigation to climate change, but at least it's very, very difficult to change the pathway of the climate change. Also, adaptation is coming more and more in the management of food and fiber systems. About the group we were working, livestock is a key economic activity in Uruguay. I will show you another graphic later. And if you look, 64% of the family producers have a livestock as the principal income or the main production system. And most of them livestock is the only production systems. Of this part, 62% of the farmers, we have an old census, we are now actualizing the census, are family members. And they manage about 50% of the whole area from Uruguay. I will show you another description about these groups. And droughts are the climatic event with the greatest impact in livestock in Uruguay. And of course has an impact on the economy results of those farmers. The question is in Uruguay, a small country with not a lot of people, that the resilience should be part of these farmers, that they can stay on the rural areas, and thus the risks are not so big. The aim of the study is to identify the resilience against extreme weather events of family farmers with and without silvopastorale systems. And now we're coming to trees and play. It was based on similar aspect that we heard recently, how to absorb shocks, how to adopt new strategies on if they transform the production systems. As I told you, Uruguay is a small country, far away. We have a temporary, not dry season climate with those average of temperatures, about 70 degrees, a very small population, but economically working very, very good. It's one of the first countries in Latin America or with the highest GDP per capita. If you look on the right, you see more or less the exports of Uruguay. And as you see, meat, livestock is one of the principal exports, followed by wood pulp and crops. And also, I think it's important to explain that Uruguay belongs to the Pampas biome, perhaps one of the most important biomes in South America. We can produce a lot of food in this area, much more than the people are living there. And Uruguay, as you see, is completely involved in this biome, a plain grassland biome with rainfalls from 600 till 2,200 millimeters. And if you are more curious about that, I can recommend to look at this homepage. There are a lot of people working on looking the land change uses and how there's evolution of this biome. In pictures, it look more or less like this. Of course, you see pastures, but the grass is not very high. Overgrazing is a common practice. And if we are thinking about raw, 1-2 months in summer without enough water, and these green areas began to be very fast yellow. At the end of the 80s, in Uruguay was promoted a forestry law to promote the afforestation, and this afforestation boom was a boom in Uruguay. Really paved the way for silvopastorale systems. A few farmers asked if trees are a good business, why not to plant trees, but not like the companies are doing that in another way. And now we're a huge discussion about silvopasture is if includes also afforestations and grasslands, and the animals can move from one part to the other, or is only a planet design on the field. And now perhaps you can connect why I present a biome, a grassland biome, and we are planting eucalyptus in this biome. Many people say it's not the right way, but this helps a lot in these systems, in silvopastorale systems, to have a resilience on adaptation on climate change. Family farmers in Uruguay are defined by those elements by the ministry. Normally are 2 employees, not much. Mostly they are living on the farm, and there are areas less than 500 hectares in size. And they obtain the main income from the activity or complete it with other activities. In the agricultural census for 2011, we accounted about 25,000 farmers. 70% of them has less than 100 hectares. And to have an idea, in Uruguay, per hectare, you can have 0.8 till 1 animal, more or less, to have an idea about the density. The socio-ecological systems was analyzed in this form, I will not go in details, but if you look above, where are we looking about vulnerability, adoption, transformation, and both together as our resilience. All these interactions in the middle part is the farm, and where are the forcing causes that make impacts and change, and how are the responses like we heard recently also in the works. And of course, the planet in another disposition. We are speaking about absorption, adaptation, and transformation as the three components for resilience. Pass it in a word of Christophe Peinet, that wrote an important book about this aspect. That resilience is not only to say try to survive. It's more complex than we think, and for sure all of us visited an university, and in those subjects we are hearing about this complexity and involving social aspects and so on. That's why I think it's a huge challenges. Methodology, we chose two groups. The two groups should have the same element, the same structure, only the difference what one group has a silvopasture system, another group no, and we do semi-structures interview. Here some explanation about the sample selection, where 18 cases from silvopastoral system and 12 cases as a control system. But the farmers should be at the same structure, family farmers till to 500 hectares. And this is the multi-dimensional analysis. You see over the capacity in blue and in the file, and the dimensions that was studied in the column. And on the base of those indicators, interview to these farmers was developed. 3 slides to results, and we finish. On the left, silvopasture system. On the right, the control system. Some keywords, of course, in the word that we have to write for the Congress, you will find more details. Perhaps to look at the management, the people that have a silvopastoral system are more permanent employees. They are affected by the interruption of public service, like electricity. It seems a little strange, but they have a better structure on machines and so on, and they are more affected than farmers without silvopastoral system. The control group depends 100% on the grass. That means if they don't have grass, they begin to make a decapitalization. The other group move the animals to other farmers. That is also a huge difference. The group of the control groups, when they have some problems, they go to the ministry and ask for help. The other group try to manage better, and they have a better access to information and use of this information. On adaptations, the group of silvopasture, of course, has a diversification in his production. They have a better financial aspects. The control is using more savings of his money. And again, the silvopastoral system are looking for new information. They're more curious on information and are perhaps better prepared to manage his farms. Both show some barriers to implement silvopastoral system, mostly because there's not enough information. And on the transformation, for the silvopastoral system groups, the relevance on the discussion on climate change is very, very high, and they discuss about this very, very often. And in compare, the control group is more waiting that those events happens, and then wait that the ministry or the state offer some solutions. In very easy words, drought is the main event that is adverse for those kinds of productions. Silvopastoral systems and producers show a lower perception on vulnerability, and they recover very fast after a drought. That means they are not much worried. And the control groups show a less capacity on absorption and are more unable to make changes regarding climate change. And as I mentioned recently, conditions and changes depend on multiple factors. And for sure, what we learned at the university is not automatically to apply. I think it could be like a doctor that study pharmacy, physiology, muscles, anatomy, and so on. And someone, you have a patient, and they say, I feel ill, where to start? I think our work is the same. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Do we have questions here? Yes, we have 2 questions, one here.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Just a very short one. Why did you go for eucalyptus trees? Why did you decide to go for eucalyptus trees?
Because they grow very, very fast, and the wood is used a lot for rural usage principle. It's for rural structure and infrastructure. All the fences and so on are made by the eucalyptus, and they grow very, very fast.
Thank you so much for your nice presentation. I have 2 questions about the eucalyptus tree. Have you also looked at the root system having to hold the soil, to decrease soil erosion? And the other point is, it is known about the number of animals for this silvopastoral system to graze a certain land, because overgrazing by itself also leads to climate change impact. So I need some clarification on this regard. Thank you so much.
I think the farmers that planted trees are not looking of those process because of to protect the soil from erosion. Of course, it helps, but it is not the principal aspect. The principal aspect is shadow and shelter for the animals, because animal welfare is coming more and more importance in the market. Now is coming also the carbon sequestration because of the methane and so on, and is increasing also the interest to plant trees about that. That means, if I understand right, soil erosion is not the principal aspect. The overgrazing is a typical, I would say, management procedure from the gauchos in South America, because cows are like checks. When you need money, you ask your helpers, bring 10 cows, sell it, and you have money. And they are thinking wrong. They are thinking if they have more cows, they have more cows or more animals, they have more money. And it's not right. The people that implemented silvopastoral systems learned that when you plant the trees, you have to close this area because of the animals. And then learn it very fast to make more rotation grazing, to keep time the grass to recuperate. That means there's also an advantage of those systems. That people must to divide the farm in more units and make some rotational pasture system. I hope was clear enough.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Thank you. We are approaching now the end of the session, but before we close this session and we go for lunch and so on, I would like to know from the audience if there is any burning question to Shem, to Jacob, to Amritpir, to Robin, or to Roberto. You can also definitely approach them during the Tropen Talk today and tomorrow. Very short notes from my side. I'm very happy that we managed this session, and so many of you stayed here. This is really an honor for us. And I want to thank very much Shem for bringing us the input of showing which of the practices are more relevant to that context. And one thing that I was wondering if combining different practices could improve even more the system. Sometimes we fall in non-linear effects and they are a little bit challenging to evaluate, but this is something definitely to look further. Jacob, I was very happy to see that climate services and forecasts can definitely now start to be used more and more. It's something that we have available, still needs to be improved significantly, but definitely we need to go in this direction. Like short-term and medium-term forecasts are really needed for us. Amrit beer, it was really great to see that the agroecological intensity is correlated and so correlated with the ability to cope with climate variation and extremes. It's also good to know this and have data about this. For Robin, it was very important for me to see that the severity of the drought is more impacting than actually the frequency. This is something that is not also always evident. And finally, for Roberto, it's very good to have the confirmation that having silvopastoral systems increase the resilience of the system. And maybe in the future, we're going to see crop livestock integration also playing a role. So it increases the complexity of the system, but it might also increase the opportunities. Okay, then with this, I want to thank you very much in name of Tropentag. And I want to wish you a fantastic lunch, a nice afternoon, and see you around. Bye.